So this video is going to fairly share things that both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump said that were not true. And don't get mad at me, hear me out. I'm a conservative Republican, and yes, I voted red. Not because I believe or even agree with everything Donald Trump said. And if you watch my videos on my channel, I call out whenever a politician says something wrong, regardless of what party they are. I believe that right is right and wrong is wrong, and I don't care what party you are, okay? But just because Trump said things that weren't appropriate or whatever, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have a lot of things about him that needs to be fought for, and the amount of things that he has been through that have been absolute garbage that the left has put him through. To me, he has proved his resilience and servitude to our nation, because I don't know who else could have handled the attack coming from the left that he handled. But some of the stuff that he has done in his past has kind of contributed to the fodder that they use. But this is a video clip about Kamala Harris, and she's preying on the people who I consider to be, not to be mean, but I won't almost say uneducated, because if anybody went to grade school, I'm pretty sure they still teach how laws are passed. But maybe for the younger generation, I will give no excuse to the older generation. There's no excuse for you. You know better, or you should know better, right? The abortion issue was never a law passed. That's not how abortion became legal. Abortion was fought for from a civil lawsuit taken to the United States Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade, the legendary Roe v. Wade case that was in place for decades. And it was hotly fought for decades. And it got to the point where it became so demonic that you had people posting videos about how they love killing babies. I mean, literally, these videos are out there. And they were like, Satanists. They were like videos and as Satanists. But then there was just people that just were in bad situations, or maybe it was medical emergencies. So there's a big long range on this story about, or the issue of abortion. But the issue of abortion was never, ever, 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 ever in a president's position. And I personally want to advocate for legislation that will cease politicians manipulating for votes issues they have no power over if they pretend to have power that they don't have. To me, that is a false attempt to get a vote. And I think those kinds of things need to stop. They're actually very common, and don't anybody say the Republicans don't do it. I'm a Republican. Yes, they do it too. I think the left is worse at it, but anyways, I'm not going to go there. But President Trump, nor Kamala Harris, or any president has ever now, nor ever had any power over the abortion rights. And it was always from the United States Supreme Court a lawsuit that was fought, and the Supreme Court declared that it was constitutional protection or whatever. So they have recently reversed that, not because they want to give their position that it's wrong or immoral, or that wasn't even the argument. It was the powers that those issues, because the struggle went on for decades on at what point should, abortion be legal or not be legal. And it got to some places where they were they were advocating for abortions all the way up to birth, and to even some arguing that even if it's born alive by accident when it's intended to be murdered, shall be murdered after birth. I mean, these are arguments that it was just getting crazy. And then you had people posting videos about how they love killing babies, and they're going to keep on getting pregnant and killing babies. I mean, crazy stuff. People were actually saying this. This wasn't a gimmick. So it just, but not like everybody was to that extreme. Okay, So I think a lot of people think that this was a church thing that happened. No, this was actually the struggle between the federal and the states. And the states wanted the powers. They wanted to have the ability to say, listen, we're going to decide at what point somebody can have an abortion or not going to have an abortion. We want the right to say, we're going to put this in our state constitution, that it is a right under our state constitution. So the Supreme Court said, you know what, we're going to give the power over abortion to the states. Now, some of the legislators pass laws without the votes of the people. And then that is where they have to fight that in court and this and that. But then some of the states put bills, put it on a vote, like what just happened this election. There were several states that made it a constitutional right, or a right under their state statute to have an abortion. So the states, while all this basically false leading about who has the right over abortions for political reasons to use it against Trump was false.
The folks who are standing, such as President Joe Biden and me, saying we trust women to be able to make a decision about what is in their best interest, and women can trust us to protect their fundamental freedoms. And on the other hand, you're going to have folks who want a national ban and have the gall to tell women who are even survivors of rape or incest that they don't have the right to make decisions about what happens to their body next. So I think there's going to be a clear choice on this issue and so many others next year in November.
Okay. It's not going to be next year in November on who gets elected to presidency. But this is just one of clips of many, many clips that she has advocated in a way that is misleading to make women think that Trump is against women's rights. And I have not found one single clip where he was for a total ban on abortion. And I'm not advocating for or against. I'm just saying there's absence of any clip of him ever saying that he was for a total abortion ban. In fact, when he was always peckered at with that question, his answer was always, the states are going to decide that, the states are going to decide that, the states are going to decide that. Okay? And so that was just something that they used to make women think, oh my gosh. And I've seen women bawling their eyes out thinking, oh, my rights as a woman. And here's the problem with that. People are voting. There was just a few states that put it on the ballot, should it be a constitutional right under the state statute? Should it be a state's constitutional right under their state? Only a few out of 50-some states we have did that. The rest of the states are pretty much, their legislators are handling it, right? And so I don't know of any state that has actually had a full ban on abortion, okay? But here's the problem with this is nobody has said the man's right. Because, for example, let's say a man and woman are married and she's 8 months pregnant. And she decides to have an abortion in a place where you can get abortion in that late term. That's a murder of that man's baby, right? In most states, it's like you can't get abortion once the baby becomes viable. That's pretty much the majority across the nation. But there are some places where even in the last trimester. And so this is very sad for our country that the man's right is not even considered. That is his flesh and blood. That's his seed in that woman. Now just hear me out. Take, for example, when you have a surrogacy case, just to use that as an analysis where a man and woman, maybe they preserved eggs. And to use those eggs, you can't use those eggs. It's contractual. And if you try to use those eggs for a pregnancy without, the agreement by both, then that's a legal case. Or in those contractual agreements, when a man and woman decide to use a surrogacy, if there's something wrong, they have to agree on, termination of the pregnancy, that kind of thing. So in those kinds of cases, they both have rights, right? So, but when man and woman get married or just in general, they agree to take the risk of getting pregnant, the man has no rights to his own flesh and blood being terminated or not. And to me, that has been one of the saddest things in this whole abortion issue, is that they want to talk about the women's rights, women's rights, women's rights, women's rights. And I don't see any legislators fighting for the man's right. It's just, it's insanity. You know, they do, now at some point, they do recognize, even the Supreme Court, that at a certain point in the womb, that the baby is accepted as a human being. But yet, I think that's something that's going to happen, is the fight for the man's right to that baby, because it's his baby. Okay? And at any rate, but I think that the concern that the states, when the medical reasons, like, for example, I'll give you an example. When I was pregnant with twins, I was active duty Army, and I was ectopic, and I was in danger. And instead of them doing an emergency surgery right then, they waited for it to rupture, right? You know, and to me, I felt like that was wrong. And I think that's the kind of situation that a lot of people are complaining about the most. But again, then you have, now let's go to Donald Trump. He has said the following things that are absolutely have no truth in them whatsoever. Okay. For example, he's going to do a mass deportation of all illegals, and he doesn't have the power to deport anybody. He can do an initiative, he can advocate, but ultimately each and every single human being who is up for deportation is up to a judge. So that's why they flocked all these immigrants to certain liberal areas, guys, because those judges there are also liberal, and they know that, one, they're going to get the money, the hundreds, billions actually. The government has been giving cities and towns money for housing these immigrants, okay? And then I believe there's a cap on it. I think that's why New York started turning them away, because when it became too many of them, it was like surpassing the amount of money that they're getting, right? And they don't tell you about that. But when they come here and they apply for refugee status, even though Biden violated the yearly cap on how many people can come here and ask for refugee status that was set by Congress based on the ability to vet them and process them and monitor them, you know, like the hundreds of thousands of children that went missing because the government said they cannot monitor them, and they wouldn't have the ability to vet the people who were walking up saying that they were going to be sponsors or where the children were living. And that was admitted at Congress, that they did not vet everybody. So it's accused that a lot of those children were trafficked, and the government has lost track of those children. So that's one of the examples. Okay, so Congress sets a limit of yearly cap. So the only way these millions of people who came in and applied for refugee status are actually illegal is because our own government violated its own law. But I don't see that judges are going to fault them, because if they came in through the ports of entry and they applied for refugee status, then they're technically not here illegally, okay? Now, the ones that he has said repeatedly, he has said, I'm not after immigrants, I'm only after the illegals. Meaning, when they come here unlawfully, like all the pictures and videos you see where they're just going under the fence, those people, he's going to get them. And they should be removed, because if you're avoiding a ports of entry, there's a reason why. Maybe it's just they're exhausted. No, I'm not putting all of them in the same box. Some of them may just been exhausted and they just wanted to get in. Maybe they just, whatever reason. But if any person avoided the ports of entry and did not apply for refugee status, they are illegally here. Okay? But he made it seem, well, I'm going to do this mass deportation. There's not that many of them who were, like, there is a large amount of them did sneak in and did not enter properly. But there was about 20 million people who came in the last 4 years. It was a large amount. I don't have the exact number. I'm just saying it was in the millions. The hundreds of thousands is the yearly cap of refugee status allowed each year. They came in by the millions, right? And so I think it was misleading to the people, and he was saying that because he wanted their votes, right? But he will be closing the border. He will be taking action. But know this also. That's also up to federal judges. Because if you remember correctly, if you actually paid attention, when he was in office, they fought him on everything. That's why the wall didn't get built. Remember his first run? I'm going to build the wall and I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. Mexico's going to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? And the wall didn't get built. Some of it did, but they fought him every step of the way in federal court. And so the judges who are going to see each and every person on whether or not they should be deported, they decide. And here's another thing that people don't know, but I'm sure Trump knows. According to our law, and this is a law that needs to be changed, no immigrant can be deported unless and until the country they came from accepts them. And do you think countries that there's so much poverty they can't even take care of them are going to, there may be some that may actually not be accepted back into their country. Like, we don't want them. We don't, no, I don't know what percentage of that will happen, but I'm just saying it's going to be so bad for that immigrant that does not get accepted back by their country. They're going to be in detention for a very long time, right? Because if they've been picked up on charges or they're here illegally, and their country won't accept them, then yeah. So anybody who's here illegally should probably leave. If you think for 1 second that your country will not accept you back, you better leave on your own, because otherwise they're going to find you and they're going to put you in detention, and who knows how long that's going to go on. But it's just, so these are examples that presidents do not have powers to pass laws. Biden, nor her, nor Trump can do anything about trans either. They didn't have any power over gay marriage. They can advocate. They can send a message to the Supreme Court justices that this is what they want. And, you know, if you are somebody who wants to be up for a justice, you know what I'm saying? But those justices have ruled against the ones who appointed them. Now, that's another thing about justices. People think, oh, he's going to put conservative judges in. And guess what? Every single United States Supreme Court judge that we have was nominated by a president, but it was a bipartisan vote that accepted that justice, whether they were liberal or Republican, and put that justice on the bench in the United States Supreme Court. And it's so bogus that people think that our judges are liberal or they're conservative when really bipartisans voted them into the bench. It's just really and truly, a lot of it is show. And I just really wish, I see the harm though, that these misleading things that both sides do to get votes hurts people. It just causes so much turmoil. And it's not right. It's not right to mislead people on either side for votes. Okay? I know enough that I know pretty much how to pull the chicken from the bones. And I know Trump, you know what? You're so full of it on that one, dude. Kamala, you are so full of it on that one. Right? Oh my gosh. They both liars. But the powers that a president has is important. He will close that border and slow that down to the trickle that it should have been. But the problem that I have is both with Republicans and with Democrats, because for 4 years, the law about having a cap on refugees coming in at a pace that is set by Congress for the funds that's needed to, and just the way that they did the immigrants too was horrible. I don't believe in segregation, and I don't like that they're segregating them by their race and by just dropping off a huge supply of Latinos or black people in one place. That's segregation. There's not enough jobs there. You harmed them, you misled them, and those children that are missing, it's unacceptable. And not one Republican, not one Democrat legislator for those 4 years that those millions were coming in filed an injunction to enforce the law on how many can come in each year. Not one. So both sides are guilty, and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it that it's the left's fault. It's both sides' fault. Okay? It's all show, in my mind. That's my personal opinion on that. Okay? So anyways, but I'm just begging people, please do not just listen to the left media. They have an agenda. They truly do. And I don't accept everything that the right media does either. That's who I am. I like to cover news. I do pick and dig and research and try to pick the bones from, pick the meat from the bones. And both sides don't always spin everything in truth. But the left is extremely aggressive and dangerous. I think the power of the left media is horrible and it's dangerous, and we need laws. I am begging you, if you're a viewer and you're still listening at this point, I am begging you to please be proactive and advocate and talk to other people about it, that we need legislation to get the media under control. And I'm not talking, but they have freedom of speech. That's not an issue. It is, I have personally read federal suits where if a media with omissions misleads people or outright is just lying, that is not a freedom of speech. That is an act of which they have liability. And I think it should be determined criminal if they knowingly lie and they have caused protests, they've caused violence, they've led people to upset. If they mislead people by omissions or twisting of facts, and they cause upset in our society, it should be determined criminal. We need laws. It's not going to take away their freedom of speech, because as long as they're presenting truth. But it is so aggressive, the amount of lies coming from the left. I have personally seen, listen, when Trump first announced he was running for presidency, I lost friends because I was not for him. I was a cruiser. 100%. I wanted to cruise. But anyways, but then I have seen that he is very strong. And right now, we have had so many nuclear threats on our country, right? And he has his faults. He has his weaknesses. And he has his issues. But he has been so resilient. And he really does want better for our country. He really does. And he doesn't want all this money being shipped over to... We have foreigners who are controlling our media, who are basically the left. The Department of Justice and the FBI have so much corruption in it. And I mean, I can tell you on various things. It's bad. It's bad. And so I definitely am so thankful. And I'm very concerned about these votes that they're still counting by the millions after Election Day. They're still allowing in mail-in votes. And I've shared with you in a video of a United States Supreme Court case, and I was attacked. My channel was attacked after I started sharing evidence against Biden from the Ukrainian prosecutor, a United States Supreme Court case. A lot of my videos were just deleted by someone at YouTube, right? And so one of those videos was a United States Supreme Court case that said you cannot count votes that was not received by Election Day. And it does not matter the post date. It doesn't matter the postmark. But currently, as I speak right now in California, there's millions of votes still yet to be counted. And they're claiming they're coming in and they're mail-in votes. And I'm like, yeah, if they weren't received, because they're talking about postmark date. This is illegal. And this is going to cause, I hope and pray, a lawsuit against the state of California for violating SCOTUS ruling. And so I will continue to post that United States Supreme Court ruling from 2021. It wasn't like it was a case about something about Arizona statute about voting, but in that ruling, there was specific laws and cases that they quoted, and it was clear. The message was clear. You cannot, I will say it again, you cannot count votes that came in after Election Day, regardless of the postmark. But California is currently doing that, according to Washington Times. And so YouTube, in my opinion, is trolling Republicans, and they're trolling the truth about the voting process. Like, they won't even acknowledge that the race is not completely called. The popular vote is still up, and according to which media source you read, the House is still up. And meanwhile, they're YouTube putting it out that the race is over. You got California, and Washington Times claiming that there's other states that are still counting votes that came in after Election Day.